I have a lot of friends who are Toronto Maple Leaf fans, and realistically, it's a selfish thing. Like for me, if the Toronto Maple Leafs go on an NHL run, I'll get to watch a lot of hockey, playoff hockey, meaningful playoff hockey with my friends, drinking beers in a shed, through the spring. And like, it'll be fun for me. So like for me to say that I want the Maple Leafs to win, it's completely honest and it's completely sincere. It doesn't mean that I love the Toronto Maple Leafs or that I would ever cheer for the Maple Leafs over the Montreal Canadiens. I wouldn't in a million years. But for whatever reason, these the more delusional Leaf fans can't grasp that concept. Like that, you would think that you could possibly cheer or wish well to another franchise because they're not capable of doing it themselves. So, anyways, I think it would be a great story. I mean, wouldn't you all want to watch the Toronto Maple Leafs break the curse and win the Stanley Cup? I mean, I know we're not Leafs fans, but I think as hockey fans, that would be a really cool thing to get to see.
Yeah, honestly, I'm in the same boat as you. I just want to see at this point any Canadian team besides Vancouver honestly make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Like that's kind of where I sit.
Honestly, man, like I would love to see any Canadian team except for like Vancouver and Ottawa and Toronto and Montreal and like probably Edmonton and then except for like Calgary, they can
See, like I'm not a Boston Red Sox or Chicago Cubs fan, but I thought it was really awesome to watch those two teams, win the World Series after, however many years it was that they were cursed. So, I mean, as a sports fan, generally, I think I love to see those cool stories. And I think the Leafs winning would be a cool story.
I definitely agree with you. So going on to the next series, we got
Nashville and Vancouver. So, as a Vancouver fan, I am nervous to play Nashville. Not gonna lie. I know we beat them all 3 games in the regular season series, but honestly, regular season doesn't mean crap when you get to the playoffs. Nashville, in my opinion, has got better defensive depth than Vancouver does. Yes, we've got Quinn Hughes and Philip Hronik, but Nashville with Yossi, McDonough, Carrier, Fabro, I like their makeup of their decor better than Vancouver. Like our next best defenseman outside of Hronik is what? Ian Cole, maybe? Tyler Myers, the walking giraffe out there. Like,
You're looking at film.
right? So that scares me. Vancouver, I believe, has the edge in net. Demko over Saros. Saros has had a inconsistent but good season. Demko's had a great season. And then for forwards, I think Vancouver holds a slight edge there over Nashville in terms of forwards. So I think it's going to be a close series. It could go 7. I have Vancouver in 6.
wow.
Vancouver in 7, sure.
What's your take on Vancouver? I've been waiting for this one. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be earth shattering. I mean, for me, I think it's a 7-game series, and realistically, I think it's a coin flip. If you held a gun to my head and said I had to pick, I think I would say Vancouver. Honestly, I think that Vancouver is a much more talented team. I think that Nashville is a collection of sort of, I don't want to call them no names because I don't think that's fair, but like sort of guys who are just like you would look at that lineup and wouldn't think that they would possibly have had the regular season that they did. But those are the guys who sometimes perform in the playoffs, right? Those are the guys that you say, "Oh, this is a band of misfits that got together and they had a great series, or a great run to the playoffs." So I mean, I'm talking about like Colton Sissons, right? Colton Sissons is one of your, I mean, he's your second line center. Like, I don't think you would at the beginning of the season have said that you would give a team with Colton Sissons as the number 2 center, or even a number 3 center, that you would give that team much of a chance of winning. But they've done crazy things that nobody expected of them already this year. I think that Vancouver probably is just a little bit too strong for them in this first round. But again, like I said, it's a toss up for me. I think it could go either way. I mean, Roman Yossi, you can't put anything past a guy like that either. So again, I think it's a toss up. I think it could go either way. On paper, I think Vancouver's the much better team, but I think that Nashville has a lot of intangibles that are often big factors in a playoff series.
I definitely agree with you there. I think I'm right there with you. I think, and Matt, of course, I've got Vancouver in 6, and just because I mean Elias Pettersson is a dog. We got obviously Quinn Hughes is a dog. Thatcher Demko's a dog. But the biggest one I'm looking out for is JT Miller. That guy is a great locker room guy. I know for the last year everybody was saying he was a locker room cancer. He is. He is a great locker room guy. Last year at the beginning of the year, everybody had him as a locker room cancer. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
Yeah, but then this year he has proven the guy just has so much passion to win and play a winning style of hockey that you need a guy like that. You need your Nathan McKinnons to tell everybody to get on and let's go, right?
You just need a guy that when you're trying to play your net, you don't get up. He's gonna smoke you in the head with a stick like a weapon. You just need those guys on your team.
No, but you do.
But here's the thing, right? Like you say that Pedersen's a dog, and you say that Demko was a dog, and you say I can't remember who the other person you said was a dog. Like I agree with you, but the reality is we don't know whether those guys are dogs yet. They could be dogs, or they could be they could be Marner, Nylander, and Matthews in the playoffs, right? And I'm not saying they are those guys, and I think it's why I'm hesitant about Vancouver and why I don't think they're going to go on a long run despite the regular season that they've had. Is we don't know who this team is yet, and those guys could all be playoff dogs, and they could be playoff performers, and they could be awesome. But again, get back to what we said earlier about learning how to win and losing before you can win. That's where I think this team is. So if they can go to the playoffs, win a series, maybe two, probably not two, but win a series, do well in the second series, then they can take that into next year. Their management can look at their roster and say, well, this is what we need to add to this roster in order to be a real playoff team. And, the players themselves can look at, well, this is what it takes to win in the playoffs. Now we realize that, like Colorado had to lose before they could win. Tampa Bay had to lose before they could win. Vegas had to lose before they could win, right? Like teams like St. Louis are rare that sort of show up in the playoffs and win the first time around. So that's kind of where I see Vancouver. I still think they're probably good enough to win this series. But I don't know that they're, I don't think they're a real contender, especially in a really strong West this year.
It definitely does get harder. I will say, Elias Pettersson regular season, he's a dog. You're right in the fact that he doesn't really have the experience, and plus he kind of gets bullied a little bit. I mean,
yeah. So coming from a Canucks fan, I'm legitimately concerned about Pettersson's ability to perform in the playoffs.
Yeah,
like this regular season, I would say is underwhelming.
Yeah,
for him,
agreed.
Like he.
And you said he was going to get 100 points this year.
Yeah, I did say that at the beginning of the season.
I told you he wasn't going to get it.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, yeah, I am worried about that. I am worried about the contract if he doesn't live up to that. Like, I think he's the sixth highest player in terms of AAV going into next season at 11.5. Huh?
How many points did he actually finish with?
He finished with like 92.
Yeah,
somewhere in there. He could be 100%. Yeah,
100%. A dog doesn't have to be a guy who's willing to put his face in front of the puck or skate through the board either, right? A dog could just be a guy who turns up his offensive production in the playoffs, and he doesn't need to be Elias Pettersson's never going to be a tough hockey player, but he doesn't need to be. Like, you can still be a dog and just be a guy who just puts up points, like a guy who gets a 1.5, 2 points a game and helps his team offensively through a series. So again, what I'm saying is I just don't know who those guys are yet. Maybe that's what they are. Maybe it's not.
One of the biggest guys about Vancouver who I think is going to be a game changer for you guys is Connor Garland, to be honest.
He's had a really good season.
No, just watching, because I was at the Calgary-Vancouver game last week, and just watching him play up close, dude, for his size, he's not afraid to get into puck battles. He's not afraid to grind, and he's actually a really good player. He's quite good.
I had season tickets for the Halifax Mooseheads when Connor Garland played for the Moncton Wildcats, and I hated that guy.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where it's like you hate playing against him, but you'd love him to have him on your team. Funny enough, last year you probably would be saying the opposite, but yeah, to see him this season he's having this season, it's pretty good. I like Connor.
That if his junior career is any indication, he does have the ability to step it up in the playoffs. Now, NHL is obviously different, but he, like I said, I hated that guy. Not only was he like a total pest, I think he's toned down the pest side of his game a little bit in the NHL. But he was he was on every level with Brad Marchand when he played junior hockey, like as far as, greasy dirt. But then he would, he'd also, put up 3, 4, 5 points in the game and kind of laugh at you as he's skating off the ice. He was not fun. Not fun to.
I love those kind of players. I love them.
So I guess going from for the Canucks standpoint, I guess your biggest concern is experience and really if the guys are going to show up. You would say.
Yeah, it's experience, but it's also like we don't know who these guys are yet. Right? Yeah, they had a great regular season, but it was a completely unexpected, I mean, you could argue that you might have thought they would make the playoffs, but I don't think you would ever argue that you thought they were going to win the Pacific Division.
No, I had them locked in at a wild card spot at the beginning of this season. But honestly, I think a lot of credit goes to Talk and his system and the coaching staff he got brought in, right? Like you got Sergey Gonchar, you got Talk. Who's your guys' assistant coach as well?
Mike Yeo.
Yeah, Mike Yeo. But Yeo was already there.
Well, he's had experience in Pittsburgh, right? Mike Yeo, he coached Pittsburgh in the playoffs.
Yeah. And same with Talk.
I know Pittsburgh fans probably don't like him, but he had a few good years before,
I loved Mike Yeo. I love Sergey Gonchar. I love Rick Tocchet, because I'm a Pittsburgh fan, right? So I liked all of those guys, and I love Jim Rutherford. Like Trader Jim just knows how to get it done. That's what they call him. They call him.
What they call him.
They call him Trader Jim because he knows how to get it done, and he gets it done early. He doesn't wait till deadline to pick up these deals. Ergo Zadorov and Lindholm, right? Like he picked them up before deadline.
Gonchar's probably hacking darts in the dressing room and
Yeah,
just locker room guys, right? Like yeah, he probably is hacking darts back there. And oh man, I'm it's sad. Like I saw a quote from Malkin, them talking about Vancouver, and he's like, yeah, they're just Pittsburgh 2.0, right? And I had a good laugh, but it's not wrong. They took a winning culture and brought it over to Vancouver, so it's exciting to see from a hometown perspective. Like, but obviously, I'm not a big.
I think they have a great future. I just don't know if this is the year. I think they still have work to do.
My concern is next year because bringing back some of these guys is going to be a little bit tough. I mean, you are clearing $5 million with Tyler Myers getting, his contract.
$6 million.
$6 million, yeah, thank you.
And Kuzmenko not on the books either. That's another $6 million.
As much as the players need to learn lessons this year in the playoffs, management, can hopefully learn some lessons too and realize which guys fit into a playoff culture and which guys don't. Get rid of the guys who don't, keep the guys who do, and then, try and bring some other guys in who can help them go to the next level and continue on towards hopefully being, a cup contender somewhere, in the next 2 or 3 years. And that's what Colorado did. That's what Vegas did. That's what Tampa Bay did. Tampa Bay lost, and then they added those depth guys. They didn't add superstars. They added like Andre Palat and Nick Paul and guys like that. Like those are the guys that get you over the top in the playoffs.
No, I definitely agree. So we're all in the consensus then that Vancouver probably takes a series. Of course, with anything could happen, right? Nobody likes to make predictions, but so far, Vancouver is the consensus.
Yeah.
So going on to the next series,
Edmonton, LA.
This is a series that I wish Maverick was here for, because I'm in the boat of LA's gonna take it, and I think you're in that.
Yeah. So every year there's always an upset in the playoffs, and I was just looking at all the series, and I'm like, as much as I don't want to take LA over Edmonton, usually when you have teams that play each other multiple times in the playoffs, one of the teams that has lost most of them ends up getting one victory over that team at some point. You can look at Vancouver, Chicago. You can look at Washington, Pittsburgh as examples, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, Toronto, Boston, that's a whole different story. Toronto's just cursed. But for Edmonton, LA, I have just a feeling that LA might be able to pull something crazy here.
1-3-1 system works, man.
It's scary.
The 1-3-1 system is a very boring style of hockey, as everybody knows right now. But you can't deny that it's a winning way of hockey for them. Like, not a lot of hockey fans like to watch it, but it works, and they're defensively sound. I mean, the fact that Drew Doughty is still doing what he's doing this year, and plus they've got a lot of guys coming up, right? Like you got your Brant Clark, right? My biggest concern is which Pierre-Luc Dubois are we getting?
Well, I think that could be a deciding factor for LA, because Dubois has kind of been just a floater all season, just kind of going out there cardio nights, right? Get his skate in, collect a couple points, and then that's it, right? So, but if he decides, hockey's kind of worth playing for here, he could be a difference maker for LA, because if he can come through, I'm of the mind that LA has better center depth than Edmonton if Dubois can actually start doing something significant.
And then when you go to goaltending too, like I know Cam Talbot had a little bit of a shaky end, like or middle to end, right? But near the beginning to middle part, everybody had him in his top 10 for Vezina, which to me was just crazy, to be honest. Like I never really had faith in Cam Talbot, but if Cam Talbot can step up and be that goalie he was at the beginning of the season, that's scary. But also on the flip side, if Stuart
Skinner can do the same thing
Stuart
too.
Skinner could do the same thing, and you can never count out Connor McDavid and Draisaitl, right? But
or that good old tap-in Zach.
yeah, but the problem is Zach Hyman's not going to be able to get to those areas that he got to in the regular season. No, but just in the regular season, because it's tighter defense, right? He's not going to be able to, like, you've seen, Dev, have you seen where Hyman gets most of his goals, correct, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, playing against guys like Kopitar and Dano, that's going to be a much harder task than than it would be against let's say Vancouver or Nashville or whoever. I agree with that completely.
So in the consensus of that, who do you like for LA?
I have the Oilers. I have the Oilers. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I picked the Kings and the Rangers to go to the final at the beginning of the year. So it kind of pains me a little bit to say that I don't think the Kings will get through this series. The Kings are kind of the opposite of the Canucks, right? We know exactly who the Kings are. We know who these guys are in the playoffs. We know what they're capable of. We know what Kopitar can do. We know what Doughty can do. We know these guys, that this is a playoff team. These guys are made for the playoffs. But I started out the year as a bit of a Oiler doubter. Especially when they, obviously they struggled out of the blocks at the beginning of the season. But as the season's gone on, I've really begun to my mind has changed a lot about the Oilers. I think they're a very good team. They added Corey Perry and Sam Carrick, guys like that who I think are fantastic additions, who are, guys who could be, well, Perry we already know is a playoff performer. Carrick, I think, falls into that mode, or that mold as well. And their defense, I mean, defense has always been what we always said the Oilers sucked at. And now, what I've always said is Darnell Nurse is a good defenseman, but he's not a first pairing defenseman. And guess what? Darnell Nurse isn't a first pairing defenseman for them anymore, right? So he doesn't have to take that role on anymore to be the defensive leader on that team. He can sort of be that middle pairing defenseman and just kind of play hockey and play 16, 17, 18 minutes a game, and just he doesn't have to be the man anymore. Like Ekholm has been fantastic for them. And Bouchard, obviously, I mean, Bouchard, I think, still lacks a little bit on the defensive side of things, but it's improving. And him playing with Ekholm has really improved and changed his game. So I like the Kings. I think the Kings are a playoff performing team. I think they're a prototypical playoff team, but I think the Oilers are just too strong. I think the Oilers in 6.
Wow, that's not like I could see it going either way.
That was my
team. I mean, I just don't see. There's just they've been to the playoffs now. They've lost a couple times. They've seen what it's like. They've added guys who they clearly see that they're missing. Like they added Evander Kane last year, and that worked out to an extent. And hopefully he can sort of continue to improve and be that guy in the playoffs. But now they've got Corey Perry. They've got Sam Carrick. I think he's going to be a huge guy for them in the playoffs. Like as a fourth liner, a Sam Carrick. I just think they're that good. I think they're just too much for LA.
No, I could definitely see where you're going here. So one question
I would have called, if I would have said that at the beginning of the year, I would have thought I was crazy. Like, because I would never have said that about them, before January.
So one question we've had as an internal group here, when it's all said and done, right? Is McDavid on your Mount Rushmore?
I think it's too early to tell. It's too early to say that for me. I mean, again, you talked earlier about how I hate to do predictions. The reason I hate to do predictions, I mean, again, I would never wish this in a million years on the guy, but he could break his leg in the first game of the playoffs and never play a game again.
Okay, so let's make it a little easier.
If he continues on his current pace, absolutely, I think he could be in that.
Yeah, but okay, so if he continues on the same pace, right, but he does not win a single Stanley Cup, are you justified to put him on that Mount Rushmore?
I think, I mean, there's so many different aspects to that argument for me. If he doesn't win a Stanley Cup and he's averages 140 points for the next 10 years, I think you're definitely talking about him as being one of the greatest offensive players of all time. The other thing for me is when I talk about Mount Rushmore, like for me, my Mount Rushmore is probably a lot different than most people's because I don't like having a Mount Rushmore that has 4 guys who played hockey in the last 30 years. To me, if you're talking about your Mount Rushmore, you've got to have a guy in there that played in the 30s and 40s. Like, they played hockey back then too, and they were good at hockey. Like, you can't just have Gretzky, Lemieux, and McDavid, like 4 guys who played hockey in my lifetime.
See, Matt and I have a goalie on our Mount Rushmore because we're in the premises of like you have to have everybody from a certain position, right? Like you got.
Well, yeah. My thing is legacy and the fact that I feel like hockey should be represented as a whole on Mount Rushmore, which is why I have a goalie up there. But yeah, that's a conversation for another.
And I mean, that's why the Mount Rushmore argument is so hard, and that's why it's such a good argument, is because you do have to limit yourself to 4, right? So you do want to find all that diversity. You want to have guys from every generation or every era. You want to have guys from every position. You want to have whatever you want to have maybe more offensive guys. Maybe you want to think about having some guys that were more defensive. Like for me, a guy like Bob Gainey is one of the greatest hockey players of all time. Nobody ever thinks about him that way because he didn't really have the offensive production that his teammates had, in those, Montreal Canadiens teams from the late 70s and early 80s. But again, I mean, I think that's what makes the Mount Rushmore argument so compelling and why everybody does it, is because you do have to, narrow it down so much. But like I said, for me, if you're looking at McDavid, for me, the hardest part about putting him into the Mount Rushmore is that you probably can't have him, Gretzky, and Lemieux on your Mount Rushmore. You got to drop one of those, at least one of those guys.
And it's so hard to draw. And it's, to me, like, I would hate to say this, but it would probably be or for me personally, if we were to put McDavid in there.
But even if you drop or, like for me, I personally can't have McDavid, Gretzky, and Lemieux. Those are 3 guys who played hockey in the last 25 years, 20 years. I can't have 3 guys out of 4 on my Mount Rushmore that all played hockey since, in the 2000s. Regret that Lemieux played, well, whatever, right around there.
I don't hate that argument. Actually, that's the first time I've heard that argument.
Like when I made my Mount Rushmore and talked about it on my lives, I had Howie Morenz on my Mount Rushmore. People were like, who the fuck is Howie?
When I talk about my Mount Rushmore, the things I talk about, or the things I think of is when I think of the most dominant, game-changing players to a team. And when it comes down to those players, it really is at the time Gretzky when, slap shots from the point went in every time. And because you're facing guys like Jacques Plante who take pucks to the head with his left stance, but no, like all jokes aside, I would have Gretzky and Lemieux up there because they were 2 very dominant players for Pittsburgh and Edmonton and everyone he played for really, except like the Rangers who trash with them. But no,
I look for guys who dominated their era, dominated their generation, like guys who were the best in the league for a lengthy period of time, and it was no discussion, right? So like Gordie Howe, you could say, oh, well, Gordie Howe played in a different time and hockey was different back then, but he was that much better than everybody else that played hockey back then. Wayne Gretzky was that much better than everybody else who played hockey when he played hockey. And that's kind of what I look for. And I think that you do have to represent, different eras and different generations if you want to have a and I get it, like on my lives, a lot of the guys are like 20, 25 years old and younger. Like they don't know who Howie Morenz is. They don't know who Gordie Howe is. They don't know who Bobby Orr is for that matter. And
I really hope they do. I really hope that they do.
I mean, a lot of them, I mean, they've heard the name, but they couldn't tell you anything about him. Like for me, the other thing that puts Bobby Orr on there, and I don't think you could take Bobby, is the way he revolutionized the sport. Like the game was different after he left than it was before he showed up. And he made changes when he played hockey that we still see today, like 50 years later, right? Like the things that he did, like revolutionized the game. Like before him, defensemen didn't skate with the puck. Like a defenseman skating past their own blue line with the puck, like it was almost unheard of. And now it's like you see it every day.
I think, yeah, Bobby Orr, to me, he would be, again, it's a really hard thing, right? Like, I noticed on people's Mount Rushmore's defensemen don't normally get thrown up there, and I'm not sure why, because Bobby Orr is, in my opinion, the best defenseman of all time. He's up there because of what he did to the game, and, like, just the way he skated, and, like, I think, like, I don't know, when you look how apparently people compare Cale Makar to Bobby Orr a lot, and I get why, like the skating being their most dominant trait, like when it comes to that, and like how they skate with the puck, and how easy they glided across through everybody and everything, and I get it, but it's hard just because a lot of people look at point totals and stuff like that.
But again, if Cale Makar ends up having a career like Bobby Orr, I mean Bobby Orr only played like 9 or 10 years in the NHL because of his injuries. If Cale Makar has a career like Bobby Orr did and has more points than him in his career and all this, I still have to give the nod to a guy like Bobby Orr because if it wasn't for Bobby Orr, Cale Makar wouldn't even exist.
Exactly.
Right? Like he owes everything he had. Like so, even if Cale Makar surpasses Bobby Orr in point production at the end of his career and has 150, 175 more points than Bobby Orr, and everyone's like, well, he was better than Bobby Orr. I was like, well, that's great, but if it wasn't for Bobby Orr, he would not have done any of that stuff. I mean, somebody might have come along after Bobby Orr and obviously, revolutionized the position. But I mean, again, getting back to your original question, if I put in Connor McDavid on my Mount Rushmore, these are all the things that go through my mind when you ask me that question, right? Like, can I legitimately say that he's dominated this generation to the same degree that, Gretzky did, that Gordie Howe did? Like, I get it. He's a dominant player and he's the best player in, probably this generation. But has he dominated Kucherov and McKinnon and guys like that the way Gretzky dominated everybody that he played against? I don't think he has.
See, and I'm in the camp of I'm a little biased, of course, but I have Sidney Crosby on the Mount Rushmore for me, just because I personally think, and Ovechkin has said it, and a lot of people have said it, but Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin really did save the NHL for a little bit there, just based on a marketability standpoint, and also
They definitely saved those two franchises, that's for sure.
Definitely saved the two franchises, but I also thought they brought the game to another level at a certain point, right? Because every night on Sportsnet or TSN, you always had the debate of who's better, Crosby or Ovechkin, Crosby, Ovechkin. Then I think Crosby really started to own that debate because, the Cups come along with it. But like he's got one of the most iconic goals in the Golden Goal in 2010, right? He's consistently led his team to 3 Stanley Cups now, right? First player and team in the salary cap era to go back to back, right? He's won every single award there can be, and obviously the numbers aren't there like a Gretzky, but that's also, I mean, that then comes into the argument the generational gap between the two, right? You had goaltenders that didn't even know how to go down, right? So that's where it's a little bit.
I don't love that argument, but
I don't love it, but it's also like it's unavoidable in a sense of it was different. I know the skates, the 35-pound skates were different, so it was definitely harder to skate back then. The sticks weren't as good, right? The technology wasn't as good then, right? And I'm not even gonna say put Gretzky in this era because I still think Gretzky would put up an insane amount of points. It's always so hard to debate eras. Like that's why I don't really like to do it. But
that's why I like to look at how you dominated your own era, right? Like the idea of the idea of trying to think, well, what would Wayne Gretzky look like if he played in 2024? I think it gets back to predictions and guessing about things that it doesn't matter how smart you are about hockey, you have no ability to do that, right? Like
exactly.
it doesn't matter. You could be the smartest hockey person in the world, but you don't have the ability to guess or predict what Wayne Gretzky would look like if he played on a line with Connor McDavid in 2024. Like we don't have that ability. We don't have the ability to know what Lane Hutson's going to be in 5 years from now. He could be an electrician. He could be the best defenseman in the NHL.
Yeah.
No, exactly, and like exactly, and like that's why I try to keep that argument out of it. But also, like you got to also look into the fact that Sidney Crosby had the pressure from from the age of like 9. Like he I don't think any other superstar, maybe McDavid, you could say now, but I don't think any other superstar in the NHL had that pressure like a Sidney Crosby, and then lived up to it, and then not only lived up to it, but produced, exceeded it, right? And then,
So 100%. And I mean, I think Crosby also, is a good example of the argument where, I think as hockey fans, we and most hockey fans focus way too much on offensive production, right? There's way more to hockey than just scoring goals. And so when people talk about their Mount Rushmore, inevitably they will start talking about points. Inevitably they will start talking about this guy and that guy. And if you're talking just about purely points, I don't think that Crosby makes it on your list.
Sure.
But if you talk about impact on the game as a whole and all around hockey players, you could argue that he's the best of all time.
Exactly. See, oh man, yeah. Thank you. I've been preaching that horn. Hey, no, you are. It's okay. No, I really enjoy hearing that. I'm sorry. I've been tooting that horn for so long.
But here's a guy who has offensive production that's in line with just about anybody. I mean, obviously he's not in Gretzky and
Like you already have
Lemieux's stratosphere as far as but he's in the discussion as one of the best offensive producers of all time. But he's also in the same discussion with guys like Mark Messier as a leader.
Yeah.
Right. He's also in the discussion with guys like, Nathan McKinnon and guys who can drag their team into the fight. Like I should say Nathan McKinnon's in the discussion with him because, but like, here's a guy who all around he'll do, and he's also a guy who will put his face in front of a puck, to win a game in the playoffs too. So when you talk about all around hockey players, you could make the argument he's the best of all time.
No, I agree, and I always like to say that Crosby's like the grittiest skilled player that I know too, because obviously I watch him like up and close and everything. So I don't know if you see him, but he will get in the dirty zones. He will get in there. He chopped off Mark Mathot's finger in one of the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a penalty though. Like
no, but he didn't get a penalty for it.
Yeah, but should have been.
Yeah.
Now, but when he first came in the league,
you talk about making other players better. He makes his own teammates better. But you know why Nathan McKinnon is the way he is?
Why?
Nathan McKinnon is the way he is because he learned from Sidney Crosby.
Cole Harbor produces legends.
He's been training with Sidney Crosby since he was 15, 14 years old, right? And so he goes out in the summertime and he goes on the ice. And Sidney Crosby, he's a nice guy. And when Sidney Crosby's on the ice, like I know guys who train with him. I know people who have trained and coached with him. If he doesn't like you, if for whatever reason you do something that pisses those guys off during a training session, guess what? You're never coming back.
Yeah, exactly.
If you act like a dink on the ice and you're lazy and whatever, and Sidney Crosby decides that he doesn't like you anymore, you're never coming back on the ice with him. If you're a coach and he doesn't like the way that, he doesn't like the program that you put together for them in the summertime, you're never going on the ice with him again. Like he's like a perfectionist, like he's like a hockey genius. Like it probably in a way makes him a bit of an asshole, but at the same time, he doesn't accept anything but perfection. And guess what? Nathan McKinnon has grown up in that atmosphere, and he's the exact same way. Like Nathan McKinnon, like why do you think Ryan Johansson isn't in Colorado anymore? Because he's lazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's lazy and because he doesn't fit. And that's not to say he's not a good hockey player and he can't succeed somewhere else, but he can't succeed in the same dressing room with Nathan McKinnon because Nathan McKinnon's eating alfalfa sprouts and drinking, carrot juice and going to a trainer and getting, specialty massages and doing all this stuff. And Ryan Johansson's going out for beers after practice. they just, and that's not, again, that's not a,
it's not a slouch.
Hockey players are like that, and hockey players have been like that. And Ryan Johansson has been a pretty good hockey player all but he is not going to, like when Devon Taves came out earlier in the season and he talked about how oh, there's guys on this team that just don't get it. They just don't remember. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
Ryan Johansson, because Ryan Johansson is playing hockey and he's having a good time and he's being Ryan Johansson, but he doesn't understand what it's like to play hockey on a Nathan McKinnon-led Colorado Avalanche. Bo Byram going to Buffalo and changing the veterans on the Buffalo Sabres immediately were like, whoa, here's a 22-year-old kid who came into the Buffalo Sabres, and within 2 or 3 days, veterans on that team were going, like, just the work ethic and the attitude that he brought from Colorado to Buffalo. They were like, this is different. Like, this is a different way of being. Whether they accept that or not, I mean, I thought at that point that Buffalo was going to make the playoffs because of that. I obviously turned out to be completely wrong, but again, I think, again, I'm rambling on again. You talk about a guy like Crosby and the ability, like I've just talked about 5 different teams that I think have been impacted by the attitude and the way he plays the game. And it's not even his own team.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
He's
And-
revolutionized the game and way people treat the game. Like we talk about Gretzky and how hockey was when Gretzky played and how things are different now. We can't say that Gretzky wouldn't. Well, one of the things that has changed is because people approach the game like Sidney Crosby does, not like Guy Lafleur did, smoking darts and drinking beers in the dressing room.
Smoking darts and breaking hearts. But
Speaking of breaking hearts, though, who do you have in the last matchup?
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I love how this Western Conference playoff preview turned into a Sidney Crosby love
Sidney
fest.
Crosby.
But putting that aside,
I love that, dude.
so what we did for our Eastern Conference playoff preview is we picked who we thought was going to end up in the Eastern Conference final. So why don't we do that for the West? And Jared, we'll start with you, buddy.
Who think in the Western Conference?
Western Conference final, who do you have?
No, it can't be them.
No, it's not going to be the Canucks. I can tell you that right now.
No, so I'm not gonna lie. I think Vancouver has the juice to do it. I just don't think that they will. I don't think they have the experience together and the playoffs together to do it.
Yeah.
It's probably gonna be, for me, it's Colorado.
Okay,
To be honest.
Colorado
I
won.
can't
Colorado and who?
think. Honestly, I think it's gonna be Colorado and Florida.
No,
Western Conference
Western
final, buddy.
Conference Finals.
Western
yeah,
Conference.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I could honestly be in Colorado and Vancouver. I just don't think Vancouver.
Colorado,
I just
Vancouver.
don't think Vancouver wins that. To be honest.
You're proving why these TikTok videos explain exactly who you are.
Just keep talking about Sidney Crosby. keep like bending over for him. It'll be all good.
Okay, so for me, I said Vegas, so I'm sticking to Vegas, and I'm a big Colorado guy for the exact same reasons Recliner Dev just said. I've got Vegas and Colorado, and
They won't meet in the West final.
Oh no, they'll meet in the second round.
They'll meet in the second round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're proving why these took off.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I got Vegas, and it's a tough one, man.
Pittsburgh.
No, I don't know. Honestly, I've got Vegas going to conference, but I wouldn't. I don't know. I think it's a wait and see for me, actually. But I definitely have Vegas there.
Okay. Devin, what about you?
I have to say Colorado. And if you're asking me who they'll play in the final, I think the next best team is probably the Stars. So if I was ranking the 3 teams in the West, I would go Colorado, Dallas, and Edmonton. In that order. I just think that Colorado just has too much of everything. They've got too much skill and talent. They've got too much experience. They've got like a guy like Nathan McKinnon that will just drag that whole team along with them, whether they want to or not. I get that they're probably not the best team on paper. But I have a hard time, like I said earlier, I have a hard time betting against Nathan McKinnon. And again, I hate doing predictions because I really, at the end of the day, it's nothing more than a guess. But I think for me, it's Colorado, and maybe I'm biased. But honestly, I think the Stars have the best team on paper. But I think that Colorado has more of the intangibles.
That's a solid choice. I go back and forth between the two. Matt?
Yeah.
It is. It really is.
So I've got Dallas and LA meeting in the West final.
Dallas and LA. That's
Dallas
a hot
and
take.
LA. Yep.
That's
Because
a hot take.
so
If that happens, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, 100%. And so like I'm obviously going to stick to my first round prediction, so I'm not going to say, that it's going to be Edmonton there because I picked LA over Edmonton. And honestly, I don't think Vancouver could beat LA.
That's fair.
I don't think they could. They've been a terrible matchup all through the regular season. Vancouver had no answer for LA's system and how they play. And I think Dallas, as you said, Devin, on paper, they're probably the best team in the West. So yeah, Dallas, LA, that's my pick for the West Final.
Perfect. Well,
Tampa's going to win the East, by the way, guys.
they
No,
did. I
no,
don't hate.
no.
I've been on the premises.
Rangers at the beginning of the season, so I'm going to say it's either going to be the Rangers or Tampa. But I think the Tampa Bay is going to be a very, very scary team.
I love that. I've been saying all season long that Tampa Bay is a regular season coaster team. Like they coast through the regular season. But what do I always say, Matt, about Tampa Bay?
Don't count them out in the playoffs.
Don't count out Tampa Bay.
They're saying there's a chance that Sergachev could come back. I heard that this morning.
That's wild.
That's wild. If Sergachev comes back,
what's the score of the game right now? By the way,
they're playing Florida right now.
it's
1-1.
It's tied 1-1 right now, and
Dude, I'm a Florida homer, man. They need to win.
but anyways, quick. Let's do some rapid questions for Dev. Matt, got any questions for Dev?
I honestly I didn't come prepared with any questions. So
Great, Jared.
yeah,
Have you ever actually been to Vancouver before?
I have, yes, love it. Beautiful. Like this time of year in Vancouver is probably the best place in Canada to be. I spent a lot of time down in the what the hell's that area called? Down by the beach, Kitsilano Beach. Friends from law school that live down there. I love it. Like the blossoms are out, and I mean I know it's really wet and rainy, but if you can get a nice day in April in Vancouver, it's awesome. I love it down there.
Awesome. No, that's great.
Vancouver, like born and raised?
Yeah, I was born in Abbotsford, grew up in Calgary, and then moved back out here when I was about 7. So didn't really grow up there, but kind of grew up there. And yeah, the reason why I hate Vancouver is because I went to a Vancouver Canucks game when I was about 8, I think it was. Yeah, 8, 5 to 8, somewhere around there. I can't remember the date, but I went to a Canucks game and I was a huge homer for the Canucks. And then when you stick your hand out for a high five, like I had one of the players like whack me with the stick, the goalie at the time, and like you try telling a 5-year-old, a 8-year-old kid that wasn't on purpose, it's just not gonna work. So I've always I can't remember, man.
no, Luongo probably wasn't there yet.
Yeah,
So it's probably Kluche, probably.
I think it might have been Kluche, to be honest, at the time. But granted, and then of course I watch my Penguins, and then I kind of just turned into a Penguins fan, and ever since then,
You're better
it's
off.
been thank you. I really appreciate that.
At least you know what it feels like to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, choose the best team in the league. Yeah.
Last like 17 or so years, but
one last question here is Montreal. What if you were put your GM cap on? What do you do with that team? You just let it go, or do you keep it going?
Now they're in a rebuild, which means different things to different people. I find myself agreeing with Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon all the time. Like I think that they let it go if they can continue to develop the guys they already have, continue to draft well. If they can manage to pick up another guy in a trade who's under the age of let's say 25 or 26, a la Newhook, a la Kirby Doc, a guy who came in with great expectations and maybe isn't living up to expectations, but needs a change of scenery, and you can get him at a bit of a discount. Zegras could be an example. Like if Anaheim decides that they don't want Zegras and Montreal can get him, at below his going rate. I'm not a big fan on them like trading away draft picks or young prospects. But yeah, otherwise I think that, obviously I think they're probably going to have to make a move here to sacrifice some of their young defense in favor of a forward, a top 6 forward probably, because just they have so many, young defensemen and they probably could use a forward. But yeah, I'm just happy. Like I don't need them to win next year. I don't even need them to win the year after. I actually really enjoy a rebuild because not only do I get to watch the Canadians play, who despite not winning a ton of games, they're fun to watch, but I also get to watch Laval play. which is fun to watch. I get to watch, you know, 3 or 4 guys who are playing junior hockey. So, you know, I get to follow like all these, you know, I got to follow some Swiss league stuff this year to see, you know, see how Reinbacher was doing. So I love it. I'm super happy. And I think that the management of the Canadians is in the best place it's been since I was a kid.
I'm glad to hear that. What and one last thing. That's really good intake. Socials. Where can we find you?
Recliner Sports on TikTok. I'm also Recliner Sports on Instagram. Really, if people want to go and follow me there, that'd be awesome because, like I said, we never know what's going to happen with TikTok. If TikTok ever goes away, we need to have another place to talk to each other. What else? That's pretty much it for the Recliner Sports account. If you want to check out Hali Tiki Room, that's more rum and tiki content. We have a website for the Hali Tiki Room. You can look that up as well. If you're ever in Halifax and you want to spend the night at a tiki bar, you can reach out to us and do that as well. So that's pretty much it for the socials for Recliner Sports. I don't like I don't do Twitter or whatever the hell we
That's
call it
fair.
now. I don't do it. So
X or
I'm not on there. So that's I do Threads, but nobody else does. So I don't really do it. I would like other people to be on Threads so that you can actually use it. But there's not much to be really done on there. So Recliner Sports is also on Threads if anybody is interested.
All right, guys. All right, guys, you heard it first. Recliner Sports, give him a follow, guys. He's a very interesting guy, and we like his content. And Dev, I hope to have you back, man. We'd love to have you back for like maybe round 2 of the playoffs.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. Anytime you guys want to do it, I mean, time permitting, I'm happy to do it. I love talking this stuff, and like I said, if you guys want to jump into my lives or anybody who's listening wants to jump into the lives, that's what I really enjoy doing the most is just getting on a live and just, you know, shooting the shit like this. I love it.
100%, man. No, it was a pleasure talking to you, man. And yeah, we'll definitely have you back, and yeah, we'll definitely hop on your lives too.
Yeah, we'll be there, man. We love to do that kind of stuff. Me and him, you know, we all go on lives with that too.
I
And
mean, my wife thinks I'm a
hopefully,
lunatic because, you know, I go down in the basement and put the hockey game on and talk to strangers on the internet, but who cares? It's still fun.
Exactly. That's all it's about. Is fun. But yeah, like I said, it's a pleasure to have you on board, man. And for you guys, we'll see you in the streets and we'll see you in your sheets. That's dude, that's the way we end it because of a joke now. But anyways, yeah, boys, keep talking that stick. Dev, thank you again for coming on board, and thank you for being our first guest ever on Talk That Stick. Yeah.
We'll need it.
All right, boys. Have a good one. Keep talking that stick.